What is up guys, Wraec is here with a new video and today with another Transcendence Hero review. We haven't done one in quite a while, I have to say it. I planned for 2 in a week, but it really didn't work out. Today, however, very interesting hero, not really from the points of the abilities, mostly from the history and how the hero really came to life. It's BQA, Blood-Tide Queen Aranea. Sees almost zero use nowadays. I personally haven't used her basically ever. I was on the side that really didn't build her. I had her very late, never really had a proper copy, and then at one point I mostly fought against her and countered her rather than really using her, and then later I came in touch with her a little bit more and used her a little bit, and then she fell out of meta pretty soon. So that was mostly my experience with BQA. It was a little bit limited, but I tested her. I tried to build a few teams. We kind of have to talk about a few abilities. Most of her stuff really isn't worth using anymore. I have to say that in advance. There are 2 hidden gems that I want to show you. And a little bit of a story to tell. So what is BQA really? What kind of hero is she? Mainly she stems from a time where we had a very prominent meta team. And that meta team, you can almost see a little bit here. If you saw my last videos, it is very obvious actually. So those heroes are in order of their release. So the heroes before her were LDA. We had SSM. We had, of course, MF. No, not MFG. MFF. I was like MFG. No, MFG is here. And we had Star Alchemist Tom Xiang. And maybe you already grasp what I said. It is the revive team with the Star Alchemist Tom Xiang. And to show that team a little bit, I actually went back into the archives. I don't know if you even know about this, but you can actually see all the fights from all the seasons of IDA. They actually have those here, so if you care about that, you can watch the fights. And we have one particular abuser of the Star Alchemist Tom Xiang team right over here. We have to show the fight. It is Franco K versus Daiko, and of course that is a very interesting fight. Showing this OG fight in this video, I think that is like very fancy. The idea was essentially that you would have heroes that can revive. In this case, we had like the carry over here, we have the LDA, and we have units that can die and deal damage over time with this SDE, which at that point was a very strong unit. It's not longer used that much right now. The interesting part about the LDA was that LDA would block off also heals. But actually in a more prominent version of this, the MFF wasn't even used. They instead went ahead and used another carry. So you would have 3 heroes that will revive and die, and you would have 1 hero that will essentially just die. And it ended up looking something like this. With heroes that would absolutely be tanky because they would heal and get armor and everything, which to this day I still think is bugged, by the way. And giving basically the enemy no chance to win at all. It felt very cheesy, but that was like the predominant meta team at that time. Also, for this specific season, we have to point out that Mont lost. Always a good thing to point out. Shout out Mont. And into that time where you have a ton of heroes on the board that die and revive, we now get a hero that is BQA. BQA as a hero is a little bit special in that she has an ability that scales specifically off that. It scales off of enemies dying, and by the way, we can show my BQA for this because of course we want to see also the sublimations and everything, and I never can find her. I don't know. It's just for this hero. So that is mine. 500 million attack, not very strong. It's okay. Roll kind of decent-ish. And she can scale off of enemies dying. Now do you ask how? Well, she actually puts an effect called Black Kindling on an enemy with the lowest HP. And you have to keep in mind, well, there is this Star Alchemist Tom Xiang team at that time that is the meta team. And who's lowest HP there? Well, obviously a carry. So you would put that on the carry, and essentially what happens when any enemy with Black Kindling dies, Black Kindling is inflicted on 2 random enemies, so it spreads. and maybe you hit the other carry, or you hit the LDA. That even works for you in that case, because he's trying to basically destroy himself. So you can imagine how quickly you would spread that Black Kindling to all the enemies if you use her to fight a Star Alchemist Tom's Young team. She is, in that sense, a hero catered to counter those teams, catered to make those teams suffer a little bit to an extent. And you have all of her skills basically triggering off Black Kindling. She's kind of bad as long as Black Kindling doesn't really spread, and only really starts scaling when you have it on a few heroes, and you kind of have longer fights. That is what she has in mind. You don't have fights that end on turn 1. You need longer fights, you need enemies dying, you need to spread Black Kindling, and then from there on out, you can activate her abilities and you can start really seeing the effects. And there are multiple effects that come together with that and scale off of that Black Kindling, starting off with like this sublimation here that increases the target's all damage received by 8% for 2 rounds. So all damage received, very, very interesting stat. A little bit underrepresented in the game back then. We really didn't have that. So that was kind of interesting. I remember people thinking about it and saying, well, that could be something for Star Expedition. Never was, actually. Never was, but it was kind of interesting. But you can see, for every enemy with Black Kindling grants herself 1 layer of green score, which is a skill effect that she uses with her ult. Increases self damage reduction, which is cool. When she takes damage from basic attacks or active skills from enemies with Black Kindling, burns 3 enemies with the lowest HP, dealing damage to them. So you could imagine if all the enemies have that, she would trigger that all the time, burn them all the time, restore HP all the time, and increase all damage reduction for all the allies all the time. So basically the counter to the team is that she just becomes obnoxiously tanky and makes your entire team very tanky if the enemy tries to use that mechanic of just like heroes dying and reviving, in that case to actually abuse like the Star Alchemist Tom's Young core. So I just made up this team, which isn't really like a team that would, that you probably could run that with her. The idea was mostly to just have a rather tanky team that would allow you to survive a little bit longer and maybe activate her abilities. But the thing is, it is tough. It is really tough. Because the idea that she is meant to counter, and she is that specific in her mind, is that enemies die and revive. And while we have that for the first time in like a longer time, we do have teams that run multiple units that die and revive, i.e. for example, or also we have LBRM that will revive. So we have 2 units there, but you have to hit them with this ability, and then they have to die. And then your benefit from like having the LBRM die and spreading the Black Kindling still has to kind of, well, outperform just running LBRM with Nova on her, which is just like a great build. So really, the benefit would then require you to take multiple hits on your BQA again, which just doesn't happen often enough, so you end up with her oftentimes not really doing a whole lot. And the fight just very quickly coming to an end once heroes start dying. And that is something that can be very annoying. And also, right now, people are kind of incentivized to scale with their LBRM or their IEA. Those often have stats, and then other heroes that they kind of neglect, something like a Melissa, they end up not having stats. And then suddenly you have like the Black Kindling on those, and then it really doesn't help you. Or if you run a CC team. CC wasn't too prominent back then, it was really Starwing Jara. That was the best CC unit, so really you didn't have too much CC going on back then. Something like a TBB would have solved the situation with the Star Alchemist Tom's Young teams all by herself, most probably. We can see we have all the effects now on those enemies. We have the Black Kindling, we have like all of that on them. Question is if it really helps us. Get a little bit of Petrify there. I'm not sure if the source is really her. She can inflict Petrify. I think she actually does at this point, which is pretty good. She can inflict Petrify. Her transition skill is really the interesting part. It triggers every time an ally does an active skill, and that has use. Let me tell you about that. So, for the most part, the sad reality is that most of her abilities don't really matter anymore for PvP. They could if we got like a little bit longer fights. The tendency is there with stuff like Melissa, but then some of her stuff feels a little bit like, yeah, outperformed already. Her buffs aren't too great. You have some stuff that has potential, like she has holy damage and crit damage buffs. Yeah, who wants that? Like, you don't really want like crit damage buffs. Some holy damage is fine, but really you don't really care about that. Removing some attribute buffs, why? You can convert them with IEA. It's much better to make the buff into a debuff than just like outright removing it. So you go ahead and do that. A little bit of Petrify is okay, but really there is a better version. There's a Transcendence version of Petrify, so she can't even do that. And you have more versions of CC now, you have better CC, you have TBB, you have Wukong, so alone for the CC it isn't really great. Scorching Curse damage over time, yeah, but you go with Nova and then you have huge damage over time instead of 300% attack damage over time. A shield, you go with Melissa, you have damage reduction increases, you can cap that already, so really a lot of her stuff was valuable at the time, is now outperformed. What I like is really her basic, astonishingly, because deals damage to the enemy with the highest attack and reduces their precision by 50% and crit by 30%. Those are substantial debuffs, actually. Those are still good. You could use that if you say like, okay, I go ahead and I make like a super fast BQA and then maybe run like an AMB or something on her, and then I let her do the basic attack. I switch my transition power to do like the basics gain because she gains 3 transition power from that, which is enough to keep her effect active, to keep her transition power active. So you could very well start off in PvP with a basic attack, go in there, hit the enemy with that, get your transition power active, get the precision debuff on the enemy, get a crit debuff on the enemy, a little bit of heal, okay, we don't really care. And then we have a little bit of crit damage decrease as well, and we have a small buff, so all of that in combination is pretty good. And then you spread that with like a DGN, maybe hit some IEA on top of that. I can see that it has some potential, I think. Precision reduction is very nice for scaling into block, maybe even comeback of HHA or something that you can run with that, so that why not? Pretty cool, honestly. But then like a lot of her kit is wasted on like Black Kindling, and as soon as you find an enemy team that really doesn't go too much for the revives, or where the Black Kindling just starts off on an enemy that just doesn't want to die, or it just isn't on like an LBRM or an IEA, but lands on something like a Melissa, which isn't really prone to dying, you end up just not activating a lot of it, or just having it on one singular enemy where you're like, okay, really my abilities won't trigger that much. And that kind of becomes too much of an RNG thing for you to really scale off. So for PvP, it's too unreliable in my opinion. It can be decent, or let's say, well, what it's not too unreliable. Unreliable can be okay if the payoff is great, but really you are betting on something that in the best case makes her a mid-hero. So you can just put a good hero in her place for PvP, like an LBRM with Nova, like an IEA, like a DGN, like a lot of other heroes that we've shown, and then you just have a better experience overall. Use Melissa in that case, and you will have a better time. So PvP, not great. Let's look at PvE, and for that we have to look at, not the Tree of Origin, the core. We can take a small look at. It is kind of interesting. We said that she scales off Black Kindling. This says it inflicts Black Kindling Ash, and back then the rumor was spreading around that Black Kindling Ash would count as Black Kindling because they chose words that were so close to each other with Black Kindling Ash and Black Kindling. In fact, Black Kindling Ash is not Black Kindling, and Black Kindling Ash will not trigger effects that require Black Kindling to be triggered. As such, it could be named anything else. So really doesn't matter. You don't have to throw those two together. You just have to know Black Kindling Ash is something other than Black Kindling. It's not the same. But some effects that we see can be triggered by both. Just not the ones that say they are triggered by Black Kindling. So it's a little bit complicated. This core, however, has some synergy with Sylvie, I guess. It will grant a hero active skill. Once it's hit by an enemy with Black Kindling or Black Kindling Ash, they will receive 200% attack and HP, which is a super small shield and not worthwhile heal. And when you try to attack them, you get 50% crit chance and a 60% chance to restore 10 energy. And in the best case, if you run the core at max, it's a 300% heal, and your crit is 25%, and there's a 75% chance to restore 20 energy. Is this worth it? No, we have better cores, so just that short, that we have to say. If we're talking PvE, we throw everything out of the window. It is sadly the case. I was at the point where I said, I don't really use her at all. And then I talked to Will, who's Idle Zeros, another YouTuber, and he was like, there is a use. There is a use as debuffer. And what he was referring to was an ability in the stream, which is this one. It is very, very standard, but this ability by itself can have different qualities. And what we have to see for that is, who does this target? Well, it targets every hero that the transition skill hits, which is pretty good, because the transition skill here, every time an ally active skill successfully hits a target, itself has 3 or more layers of transition power, which we can easily obtain just by doing a basic or an active, so it's very easy. We can do 1 basic and have that. We deal 800% attack damage to 3 random enemies and inflict Scorching Curse for 6 rounds. Scorching Curse doesn't matter, small damage over time, but we hit 3 random enemies. That is the important part. So 3 random enemies, every time we do an active skill, will receive a 15% attack debuff, which is good. That is pretty good, because we can, if we just have, imagine she attacks first and then 5 of your allies attack, that's 15 attack debuffs. That's very, very good. So we can have a ton of attack debuffs there. You throw DGN with that, spread it a little bit around, do a second turn, bam, enemies don't really have attack. Very good, very nice. So that is something we have. That is like really the main thing, sadly. She has like very standard stuff here. Second note, you can just go for damage. This damage over time thing never really worked. Damage over time is off meta in itself. We have attack reduce here. Speed reduce, kind of fancy if you want to go for that, but the attack reduce is what is used for PvE. We have a fancy petrify here that you can go for if you fight Valks, however you don't really want to. We have a burn that targets both Black Kindling and Black Kindling Ash. Doesn't really do a ton of damage. We can do this, which is fancy. Inflicts Black Kindling Ash on 1 enemy without Black Kindling or Black Kindling Ash for 3 rounds. So if you want to kind of increase the potency of your core, that is how you do it. It won't help you with like the Black Kindling effects, but this is like one of the effects that you need to know about. And here you have speed. You have the very interesting All Allies HP restoration, which I tried. Wasn't too fancy, sadly. And then we have like the last part, which we're going to check out here because this other menu is still bugged. We saw the first part already. And then at 15 layers, we consume 15 layers to inflict Scorching Curse for 6 rounds and Black Kindling Ash for 3 rounds, which will make your core like a whole lot stronger and be utterly not worth it. You will never want to trigger that. You will always want to trigger the first part. And what you will always want to do is you want to trigger that together with like the attack reduction. So that is her role. And that is utterly replaceable. And the thing is, she's just very good at throwing attack debuffs. And when you use her for that, none of her abilities matter. It sadly is the case, and this clip is, by the way, by Will Al Zeros. The link is in the description. Leave a subscription there on his channel. Maybe leave a nice comment under his recent video. And he's also an enjoyer of SSM if you like that. It's pretty cool. What I want to point out here, and hope we can see this, we had to kind of reduce the size of this clip. There are a ton of attack debuffs hitting the enemy, and this is like his preferred stage that he likes to use this at. It is basically the SQH counter stages. So if you have like SQH over here and you have the counters, that of course depends on the enemy attack. And if you want to reduce the enemy attack, the thing is, or the enemy pings that you take from that, then it really helps to reduce the enemy attack. And another thing is, of course, if you're fighting a Gaggy, every hit on the Gaggy will make him attack your team, so you also want to reduce his attack, and if you can sufficiently do that, as soon as all the enemies hit 0 attack, even such punishing mechanics like as SQH pings won't really hit you. So that is like the main thing, and that is also why he's using BQA right here. There is a little bit of a discussion that I had with him, because BQA is actually not the only hero that has this ability. In fact, there is one hero that I consider superior to that, and that is Star Alchemist Tom Young. He also triggers on active skill, he also hits 3 random enemies, he also reduces 15% attack. So for that specific debuff purpose, he has the same abilities. You can stack both, obviously, if you want to do that. It is an option. Star Alchemist Tom Young on paper is the better hero. He has the attack scaling. If you don't know about that, maybe check out my review. That will allow you to stack a ton of attack on your main hero, which will help you clear such stages a little bit faster. So definitely a little bit more interesting for that, and will explain to me that really he uses BQA only in certain situations, mainly those where it requires to basically not hit a whole lot of enemies, because the difference is she only will attack one enemy, which is the enemy in slot 1 with her active skill. So if you go for the active skill with an energy artifact like a demon bell or something, she will only hit the slot 1 hero. She won't hit something like an SQH, which could pretty quickly result in her just dying or outright, which also, by the way, and we have to say that, the black kindling is removed when she dies, so you really don't benefit from it at all anymore when she's dead. So you want to avoid that, obviously, and you want to have her on the battlefield to provide more debuffs. And sometimes it's just easier to have her just hit one enemy instead of having something like a Star Alchemist Holmes Young, which is great, but also hits the entire backline, which in this case would have included an SQH, for example, and might in other cases include some even more punishing heroes, or even something like a double SQH or something. So it would be possible. So this hits a few more enemies, but still on paper a little bit better hero, because we have the same attack debuff, and we have this attack increase for our main hero, and we have like the same poisoning, we have the same 3 random enemies. So while you can stack both, it is rather niche. It is very niche PvE use. And honestly, if you were to ask me, Wraec, I want to have a debuffer, who do I build? I wouldn't point to BQA, I would say build Star Alchemist Holmes Young. And then maybe if you say you want to do double debuff, then you can go with the BQA. And then maybe if you have her and then this specific situation arrives, then she can be a key to clearing it. But it's tough. It's very, very, very niche, and I don't really see it, if I'm honest. And in many situations, it just doesn't work out. We probably saw the most beautiful example of a fight here against Anarchy a second ago. And I bet if I attack one more time now, it's just not going to work out. Because we had like the black kindling on the enemies and everything. It worked out very, very much so beautifully. But really, in many situations, she's just like more or less immediately defeated. I guess it helps that his team has like 2 heroes that can revive, and that we have almost double the stats, I reckon. But yeah, it could very much so quickly end with us being defeated. We see the little extra attacks right here, the little counter attacks. Those do help, but yeah, don't really do like a whole lot of damage. And also reviving units, you can see they don't really have black kindling on them. So if the remaining units do, but not the units that revive it's themselves. So something like an LDA would basically clear himself of black kindling every single time he revives, on the cost of like the allies receiving black kindling, of course. You can see already our BQA is dead. The fire effect here that you saw, the black kindling, was removed from all of the enemies, so that will pretty quickly end with us dying. We do have the apparition CC active. The carry! Let's go! That is actually insane. That is so insane how she carried that. I mean, Nova certainly helped. And that we got the apparition trigger was very good as well. But that is fun that we got the win there. Okay. But definitely not because of BQA. And I think, can she make a return? I think if we get like one more hero that slows down the fight, and Oscar kind of has that. He has like... he was announced to be like the hero that stalls a fight a little bit. Like stalls fight on early rounds and then punishes the enemy. She could work in a scenario like this. Maybe. Maybe if revive heroes stay meta and we get like a little bit more stall, we could see a return. But right now, yeah, a little bit trashy, sadly. Only use that you have to know about is basically the stuff with the transition skill. And that is really all. Nonetheless, if you are... prepared to buy her, she will probably be very cheap, I reckon. So on the auction house, maybe we take a quick look. She is rare. I remember there basically being no copies at all for her on the market. And oh, I have to show you that too. But we do that after the auction house. Let's see, for the Awakened tier, we have an A+ here. It's not really super cheap. I guess you can get like an A for 7,990. Not too bad. So you can get a decent copy of her. It's just not very good. That's the point. If you want to do that, however, then I definitely recommend you check out the link down in the description, because that will bring you to SGUp, where you can get the best story gems and 75% cheaper than in-game. And if you buy big amounts, let's say 60k plus or something, you get it even cheaper. You can get top prizes there, and that's absolutely safe. So don't spend your money in-game on the story gems. Just go to SGUp, get it cheaper. Absolute recommendation by me. Last point I want to make, and that is very, very fancy. We have to go into the guild for that, into the store, because I always thought she had 2 skins, because she has this skin, which is the Robot Cowgirl, which is her main skin, Blood-Tide Queen Aranea. And I thought there was a second skin in this shop here, and there actually isn't. Well, it's the wrong shop. It's this one. There actually isn't. There is an Aranea skin in here, this one, but this is for base Aranea. There is a base Aranea skin in here, which I thought was fancy, because it's probably one of the last normal heroes to receive a skin, I reckon. That hasn't happened for quite a while. That used to happen. It was just such a weird thing to think about. But yeah, with that, I leave you guys with the thoughts. Tell me what you think about Aranea down in the comments. Let me know if you still want to use her. Do you think she can make a comeback? Hit that subscribe button for me and for Will. The link to him will, of course, also be in the description. Thank you for providing me with that video. And with that, I wish you guys a great day. We'll see us in the next one.